Hello friends, tell me, do you know what an orchid is? On the basis of what characteristics does a plant belong to Orchidaceae, this extremely variable flowering plants? As I said in episode 2, there are about 30,000 naturally occurring species of orchids distributed on all continents except Antarctica. There's such a variety of shapes and features that sometimes you walk by an orchid and don't even recognize it as such. Some orchids have round pseudobulbs. In others, they're flat and oval. There are orchids with very long pseudobulbs or very short ones. Some bulbs are very thin, others are very thick and bulky. Some orchid plants have no pseudobulbs at all, or they're so small they're covered by the leaves. There are orchids that have only one leaf per pseudobulb, and others with 2 leaves per pseudobulb. Still others have many leaves emanating from a central rod-shaped pseudobulb. Some orchids grow on tree trunks or branches, which we call epiphytes. Other plants like to grow on rocks and boulders on the slopes of their habitats. These are called lithophytes. And some orchids grow on the ground like most other plants. These are called saprophytes. So there are orchids for almost every growing medium, including some species that are considered aquatic, such as Habenaria repens. Because of this diversity, neither the form nor the medium in which they grow is sufficient to determine whether a plant is really an orchid or not. For a flowerless plant, the roots are the best clue. Orchid roots usually have an external structure that we call a velamen. This is a spongy layer that covers the roots and helps absorb and retain water. It is a silvery white layer that turns slightly greenish when wet. But beware, there are other plants like the Araceae that also have root velvets. Do you always have to examine the flowers if you really want to be sure? Yep, the flowers are the only way to know for sure if a plant is an orchid or not. Orchid flowers usually have 3 petals and 3 sepals. One of the petals is modified, and we call it the flower lip. But not even these basic features are a sure thing. Sometimes, some of these structures are very small, almost non-existent, or they're fused together just to complicate things a bit. The only part of the flower that can make sure that we're looking at a true orchid is the column, the structure that contains the stigma and the anthers, male and female parts of the flower. We need to know this part well so that we can propagate and crossbreed our plants. Let's take apart this flower of Cattleya triani, which has long passed its peak flowering period, so that we can take a good look at the column. So here we are. This part that's right in the center of the flower is the column. Here you can see this small concavity. It is the stigma, or the female part of the plant. It contains a sticky gel to activate and hold on to the pollinia of the other parent plant. Right there at the tip of the column, there is a little lumpy thing, the plant's anther. It pops out very easily, and it is the male part of the flower. Inside of it, you find the pollinia. Each pollinia contains hundreds of thousands of gametes. Most Cattleyas have 4 pollinia, but the ones that used to be called Lelias, well, those have 8 pollinia. Well, now that we already know the anatomy of an orchid flower, let's get on to it. Let's make 2 different crosses between plants of the same species. The first one between 2 plants of Cattleya walkeriana. First thing to do is to emasculate the flower that will play the mother, the one that will bear the fruit, so you don't risk a self-pollination to accidentally occur. I will keep these pollinia though, for later use. Let's place it inside a paper towel envelope. which I then staple inside another piece of paper with the identification written on. They're still not gonna last very long, so if you're gonna use them, do it soon. Now let's pick the pollinia from the father plant. Always pick the strongest plant, the one with more pseudobulbs and leaves, to play the mother plant. The one that will have to spend energy making the fruit and bearing the seed. Place 1 or 2 pollinia inside the stigma of the mother plant. Make sure it's well stuck inside that gel you find there. It is very important to tag every single crossing we do. Months later, it's very easy to forget who is who. You can use empty containers of margarine, butter, or cream cheese to make your own orchid tags. You can use a waterproof permanent marker, or you can sand your tag to make it porous and use a regular lead pencil. And here we are. Once the tag is on, the crossbreeding is done. Now let's cross 2 plants of Cattleya percivaliana. The one on the left has an outstanding flower, but it is a small cut. It only has 2 pseudobulbs. I'm going to cut those flowers off to preserve the plant. I'm going to use its pollinia on another nice plant of the species. Always disinfect your scissors before you cut any orchid. Okay, now here they are. Percivalianas have 4 pollinia. Again, we expose the column and insert the pollinia inside the stigma. And never ever forget to tag your crossing. Just a few weeks later, we have the first signs that things are going well. The flower has dried, but the stem, its ovary, is still green and beginning to swell. In just a few months, it will turn into a fruit, like this one of Cattleya purpurata. In our next episode, how to make a glove box and why is it so important. Just make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and ring the bell.